Hello and welcome to BYJU'S IAS. Let's take up the analysis of today's The Hindu newspaper. The Supreme Court is discussing the need for a voluntary code of conduct for cabinet ministers, which would comprehensively cover both their private activities and as well as their professional or public activities. See, we already have a code of conduct which applies for the cabinet ministers of both the union government and as well as the state governments. But the existing code of conduct is largely focused on promoting financial discipline amongst the cabinet ministers. For example, under the existing code of conduct, the cabinet ministers are required to declare all their assets and liabilities to the prime minister and the chief minister respectively. It also mandates the cabinet ministers to cut off any financial interests that they might have in private companies, organizations, and trusts before they are appointed as cabinet ministers. The existing code of conduct also mandates the cabinet ministers and their immediate family members to not take up employment under foreign governments or in any foreign embassies without obtaining prior approval of the prime minister. It also mandates them to not accept gifts beyond a particular value. So as you can see, the existing code of conduct for cabinet ministers is largely dealing with financial discipline. It doesn't comprehensively cover all the private and public activities of cabinet ministers. Right now, a constitution bench of the Supreme Court is looking into a couple of cases wherein the petitioners are demanding a new voluntary code of conduct for cabinet ministers of both the union government and the state governments in order to ensure that the conduct rules applies for all the private and public activities of the cabinet ministers. The petitioners want the new conduct rules to impose greater restrictions on the right to free speech and expression of the cabinet ministers under Article 19 in order to ensure that their statements does not affect the fundamental rights of the citizens. The petitioners are requesting the Supreme Court for directions which will help in the drafting of a new code of conduct for the cabinet ministers. They want this code of conduct to be based on the moral and ethical values that are enshrined in the Indian Constitution, and they want the code of conduct to be based on the values of good governance. So in this context, let us understand what is code of conduct and how does it help promote morality, ethical behavior, and professional behavior, especially in public administration. See, a code of conduct is nothing but a set of behavioral rules and a set of social standards that applies to the members of an organization. And this code of conduct is designed based on the moral and ethical values and the mission and the vision of the organization. See, such a code of conduct can be used to promote ethical and professional behavior not only amongst the members and employees of a public organization, but it can also be used to promote ethical and professional behavior amongst the members or the employees of a private organization. See, every organization, be it public or private, it will have a set of moral and ethical values and a mission and a vision which will be guiding its functioning and decision making. These broad values are referred to as the code of ethics of the organization. And if these broad ethical values are turned into specific conduct rules, then it will be known as the code of conduct for the organization. So based on the values of an organization, which can be found in its code of ethics, a set of specific conduct rules are designed which will help the organization to regulate the behavior of its members and its employees. This code is known as the code of conduct. So basically, the code of conduct will provide for a list of acceptable and unacceptable behavior for the employees and the members. It will provide a list of do's and don'ts which has to be followed by the employees or the members of an organization. And if they fail to abide by these guidelines, they might be penalized as well. So the main objective of implementing a code of conduct in an organization is to contribute to the welfare of all the stakeholders in the organization. This includes the organization itself, it will include the employees and the members of the organization, and it will also include the target group that the organization is serving. So overall, the implementation of a code of conduct in a private or a public organization will help in respecting and promoting the rights of all the stakeholders. See, every organization will be inspired by a set of ethical values which will help guide its functioning and decision making. For example, a private organization might be looking to promote environmental ethics amongst its employees and members. On the other hand, a public organization might look to promote ethical values such as integrity, transparency and accountability, empathy, political neutrality, etc. But generally, such ethical values are aspirational in nature and they are very broad. So as a result, they are hard to define and very difficult to enforce. So if an organization is seeking to achieve these inspirational goals that have been laid out in its code of ethics, then it needs to provide for specific conduct rules which are inspired by its code of ethics. Such a specific set of conduct rules will lay down the basic minimum standards for ethical and professional behavior in an organization. And these conduct rules can be easily enforced. That is, if the members of the organization, if they violate the conduct rules, they can be penalized. You can even create a system wherein those who are abiding by the conduct rules, they can be rewarded. Through such a system, an organization can aspire to promote ethical, moral, and professional behavior amongst its members and employees. In the context of the Indian state, ethical values and inspirational goals can be drawn from the Constitution of India, it can be drawn from Indian philosophy, and it can also be drawn from the values of good governance. Based on some of these ethical values, the Second Administrative Reforms Commission has already recommended that all government organizations should adopt a code of ethics and a code of conduct. In the Indian context, the examples for a code of conduct would include the model code of conduct that is being implemented by the Election Commission. These conduct rules applies for those who are contesting elections. Then all India service officers such as the IAS, IPS, etc., their conduct is governed and regulated by the service conduct rules. Then we also have a code of conduct which regulates the behavior of the MPs of the Rajya Sabha, and recently the Lok Sabha Speaker has set up a committee comprising of members from the Ethics Committee of the Parliament in order to work out a code of conduct which will apply for the MPs of the Lok Sabha. And as we discussed, we already have a code of conduct which applies for cabinet ministers of both the union government and as well as the state governments. But the problem is, the code of conduct is largely focused on their financial discipline. So right now, the Supreme Court is discussing the need for a broader code of conduct for the cabinet ministers, which would govern their public and as well as their private activities. Next, on page number 5, we have an article which refers to the cancellation of elephant safari in the Dudhwa National Park. So in this context, let us talk about the key features of the Dudhwa National Park which can be very important for prelims. See, this is where the Dudhwa National Park is located. It is located along the India-Nepal border and it is located in the Terai belt of Uttar Pradesh. The Dudhwa National Park is one of the most important protected areas in India, and hence you should be aware of its location, you should be aware of the climate and the vegetation which is found in this protected area, and more importantly, you should be aware of some of the threatened species that are found in the Dudhwa National Park. See, the Dudhwa National Park is also a tiger reserve. The Dudhwa National Park has been clubbed along with the Kishanpur Wildlife Sanctuary and the Katarnia Ghat Wildlife Sanctuary under Project Tiger, and it has been set up as a tiger reserve as well. And if you look at the climate of this region, it has extremely humid subtropical type of climate with dry winters. The summers tend to be very hot, the monsoons are quite humid, and the winters are very cold and dry. Then if you look at the habitat and the vegetation of the Dudhwa National Park, you will find that it has a typical Terai vegetation. See, the Terai belt represents the plains of the upper Gangetic region. It is found along the Indo-Nepal border, and this region of the upper Gangetic plains is very rich in alluvial soil, and it is fed by a number of perennial rivers. So as a result, the Terai belt has a very unique vegetation, and it is dominated by three types of ecosystems. One, in the Terai belt, you can find very dense forests. The type of forest depends upon the season and the weather. Depending upon that, you can find semi-evergreen forests, moist deciduous forest, seasonal swamp forests, and as well as dry deciduous forests. But one of the most important features of the Terai vegetation is the presence of open grasslands. In the Dudhwa National Park, around 19% of the protected area is comprised of grasslands. Next, the upper Gangetic plains of the Terai belt is also known for its vast presence of wetlands. These wetland ecosystems are fed by the perennial rivers, and they are known for their rich biodiversity. The Dudhwa National Park is home to a number of threatened species as well. You can find the critically endangered white-rumped vulture. You can also find the endangered Bengal tiger, and as well as the vulnerable Indian rhinoceros, or also known as the one-horned rhinoceros. And another key species that is found in the Dudhwa National Park is the Barasingha, or the swamp deer, which is listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red Data list. See, the Dudhwa National Park is one of the most important habitats for the Barasingha, or the swamp deer, because more than 50% of the world's Barasingha population can be found in the Dudhwa National Park. Now let's take up a very important editorial from page number 10 that deals with the quality of tap water that is supplied in Indian cities. See, recently, the Ministry of Consumer Affairs, Food and Public Distribution came out with a report which highlighted the poor quality of water that is being supplied in Indian cities. Currently, the standards for drinking water has been laid down by the Bureau of Indian Standards. According to the BIS, all the water distribution companies and the municipal bodies, they need to follow IAS 10500 standard, which was laid down in 2012. But the report of the Ministry of Consumer Affairs has shown that most of the Indian cities have failed to meet this standard, and it has highlighted the threat posed by poor quality water that is being supplied to the households in Indian cities. Despite this falling standard in water quality, there is no pressure on the water distribution companies and the municipal bodies, because according to the editorial, most households in urban areas rely more upon packaged drinking water and groundwater instead of tap water because of the unplanned nature of urban development in India. Due to the haphazard nature of urban development in India, there are many clusters in Indian cities which do not have a connection to tap water. Hence, these people or these households, they are forced to rely upon packaged drinking water and groundwater. Hence, the pressure on water distribution companies and the municipal bodies to improve the quality of tap water is relatively less. See, when it comes to the maintenance of water quality in India, a number of standards have been laid out by the government. But most of these standards exist merely on paper instead of being followed in practice. For example, these standards prescribe that tap water should be completely free from pathogens such as viruses, parasites, and other microscopic organisms. These standards have also laid down a maximum threshold for the presence of toxic chemicals and toxic substances. But unfortunately, these standards are hardly followed in practice, and tests conducted across India has shown that the quality of water that is supplied in Indian cities is extremely poor. Despite these alarming reports, the reason why there is no pressure on our municipal bodies is because there is no accountability of these agencies. We also do not have sufficient scientific data which is available in the public domain. Even when such tests are carried out, and even when such reports are published, usually the data is withheld from the public. And this adds to the lack of awareness with regard to the poor quality water that we are consuming. In the light of this threat, the editorial says that the current steps that are being taken by the central government are not sufficient. The central government has tried to introduce a ranking system for municipal bodies with regard to water quality. It has even laid out a standard benchmark for various urban services. The central government has hoped that through such a system of ranking and benchmarking, it can create a system of incentives and disincentives and use this to push the municipal bodies to perform. But this methodology has not worked because both the center and the state, they continue to treat water as an isolated subject. So the editorial says that it is high time for the center and the states to take an integrated view towards housing, water supply, sanitation, and waste management, because all these subjects are interrelated. You cannot ensure water quality by treating water in isolation. You need to take an integrated view and club water supply with housing, sanitation, and waste management, and such an approach can help in promoting the quality of water. Next, the editorial suggests a radical approach to improve water quality in India. It is asking the government to accord a legal right to the consumer which will entitle him to access good quality water. According to the editorial, if the consumer is given a legal right to access good quality water, then it might help the consumer to hold the municipal bodies and the water distribution companies accountable. This might push the municipal bodies and these water distribution companies to improve the quality of water and match the standards that have been laid out by the Bureau of Indian Standards. Apart from this, the editorial also suggests that a separate independent water quality testing agency should be set up in every state. Because right now, water quality in every state is being tested by the same agency which is supplying water. So this is a case of conflict of interest. You cannot expect the supply agencies to be completely transparent about the testing process. So the editorial suggests that an independent water quality testing agency must be set up in every state, and by using this data, a national water quality index must be developed, which will be quite similar to the national air quality index that we already have. Such a national index on water quality will help promote greater awareness amongst the citizens with regard to the quality of water that they are consuming. It will also help the citizens and the civil society groups to exert greater pressure on the government and its agencies and ensure that they start meeting the standards that have been laid out with regard to water quality. Now let's take up a column from page number 10. The column written by former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh evaluates the current economic crisis in India, and he establishes a very interesting connection between social trust and economic growth. According to the former Prime Minister, economic activities are an outcome of social interactions, and these social interactions are in turn based upon trust and self-confidence. The term social trust over here refers to the trust that the citizens have on the government, on the regulatory institutions, on the media, on the private enterprises, etc. It also includes the trust that the private companies, banks, and other key economic institutions have placed on the government. So according to this theory, it is the mutual trust amongst various stakeholders of the economy which is responsible for promoting economic growth and economic transactions. This interconnection between the state of the economy and the state of the society has been recognized from the days of Adam Smith to the days of modern behavioral economists. Adam Smith, who is considered as the father of economics and who is seen as a classical economist, he also believed that social trust amongst all the stakeholders is extremely crucial for the promotion of economic growth. Even modern behavioral economists have highlighted the role of social trust in promoting economic transactions. According to former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh, this social trust in the Indian society has been destroyed by the hardline policies of the Modi government. He blames the Modi government for promoting a climate of fear and mistrust through ill-thought-out economic policies such as demonetization. He also blames the hardline policies of the Modi government, which has damaged the social fabric of the Indian society. According to Manmohan Singh, it is this erosion of social trust which is the root cause behind the current economic crisis, and this should be a greater concern than the depressing economic statistics. See, the former Prime Minister highlights that the nominal GDP growth of the Indian economy is at an all-time low as compared to the last 15 years. He also refers to the high rate of unemployment, the drastic reduction in household consumption, the extremely high levels of non-performing assets with regard to India's banking institutions, and also the deceleration in the electricity sector. These depressing economic statistics are a direct outcome of the damage that has been caused to India's social fabric and social trust, according to former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. He says that the hardline taxation and fiscal policies of the Modi government, along with demonetization, has created a climate of fear and mistrust amongst businessmen, bureaucrats, and banks, and this has reduced social trust in the Indian society. The risk-taking appetite of the key stakeholders of the Indian economy has gone down, and this has resulted in a drastic reduction in economic activities. He says that due to these hardline policies, banks have become unwilling to lend loans. Bureaucrats have become hesitant to take riskier decisions, and businessmen have become hesitant to make riskier investments. Apart from promoting a climate of fear and mistrust amongst the key stakeholders of the Indian economy, the Modi government has also tried to erode the independence of autonomous institutions such as media, regulatory bodies such as the RBI, SEBI, etc. And this has eroded the trust of the public in autonomous and independent institutions. Apart from highlighting these concerns, the former Prime Minister also points to the possible risk of India facing a stagflation situation. See, stagflation refers to an economic situation wherein a country could face high inflation accompanied with stagnant demand and high unemployment. If these three conditions are present in an economy, then the economic situation is referred to as stagflation because economic growth nearly becomes stagnant, but at the same time, inflation continues to increase. If a country gets locked in this situation, then it will have a severe impact on its long-term economic growth, and even large developed economies have found it very difficult to bounce back from a stagflation situation. In India, as of now, inflation has largely remained under control, even though demand has declined and unemployment rate has increased. And over the last one quarter, inflation, especially food inflation, has started to go up, and this increases the risk of stagflation for the Indian economy. So as a result, former Prime Minister Manmohan Singh has called upon the Modi government to rebuild social trust immediately and remove the climate of fear and mistrust by repairing the social fabric that has been damaged through its hardline policies. Then he is calling upon the Indian government to capitalize on the opportunities that are available for the Indian economy. He refers to the slowdown in China's economy and the export gap that it has created in the global economy. He says that this is an opportunity for India to focus on manufacturing and promote exports so that Indian exports can fill this gap created by the slowdown in China's exports. He is also calling upon the Indian government to capitalize on the low global oil prices and the complete majority that it enjoys in the parliament to introduce balanced fiscal policies which can rebuild social trust and remove the climate of fear and mistrust. Now let's take up the practice questions. The Code of Conduct for Cabinet Ministers is developed and maintained by the Ministry of Home Affairs. Option C is the right answer. Now let us take up the second question. Which of the following can be seen as an ethical value of conduct to be possessed by a public servant? Maintain integrity in public service, responsiveness to the public, particularly to the weaker sections, maintain confidentiality in the performance of his official duties. All the three are correct. Option D is the right answer. See, on the face of it, maintaining confidentiality may not appear as an ethical value, because generally we associate ethics in public service with ethical values such as integrity, honesty, transparency and accountability, responsiveness, empathy, etc. But maintaining confidentiality is also an ethical value, especially when the public servant is working in sectors related to national security, defense, foreign policy, etc. So the maintenance of confidentiality in the performance of one's official duties is also one of the ethical values that must be possessed by a public servant. So option D is the correct answer. Now let us take up the next question. ETIM, or the East Turkestan Islamic Movement, is a terror outfit founded by the Uyghurs of the Xinjiang province of China. Option C is the correct answer. Now let us take up a map-based question. The Jayakwadi Dam is located on which river? It is located in Maharashtra. It is located on the Godavari River. Option B is the right answer. Please take a look at this map. The Jayakwadi Dam is located in Maharashtra on the Godavari River. Now let us take up a practice question from the 2016 prelims paper. Doctors Without Borders, or MSF, often in news, is a non-governmental international organization. See, Doctors Without Borders is a very popular humanitarian organization. It works in various conflict zones and it provides free medical services to the victims of civil war and conflicts. Finally, let's take up a couple of mains practice questions. The first question: why is a code of conduct essential for those who are in public services? The second question: water quality in India is found to be below expected standards. What measures can be taken to improve the situation? Kindly write an answer to these questions and post them in the comment section below. So this concludes our discussion for the day. Thanks for watching.